Welcome to Straight Talk Soundboard, which is a sounding board where senior technology executives can try out ideas, exchange professional insights with their industry peers, but also a soundboard to amplify those insights and ideas to a broader audience. I'm Paul Hemp, the editor-in-chief of Straight Talk Publications and Events at HCL Technologies. And we're very fortunate to have with us today 7 distinguished technology executives who are going to share technology and professional insights they've garnered during the past turbulent year, but also offer some predictions about where they're likely to be a year from today. Before we jump into the conversation, let me take just a minute to introduce our panelists. Vaidyanathan is the Chief Technology Officer at OneMain Financial, which is a banking lender based in the Midwest in the United States. Shannon Poulin is Corporate Vice President for Sales at Intel, the chip maker, and he's based in the state out on the northwest in Oregon. Raj Kadam is CIO of technology services provider Conduent, focusing on healthcare issues. Sanjeev Sharma is the Senior Vice President and Head of Automation and Platform Engineering at TRUIST Financials, which is the owner of SunTrust Banks in the U.S. Rachel Barber is Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for Gaming and Lottery at IGT, the international gaming company. Arvind Radhakrishnen is Technology Strategy Leader at international financial services firm Wells Fargo. And last but not least, my colleague Arthur Filip, who is Executive Vice President for Sales Transformation and Marketing at HCL Technologies. Longer biographies of our panelists will appear at the end of the recording. So it was almost a year ago today that exactly a year ago today, that the first reported death from COVID-19 occurred in the U.S. And who could have ever predicted what our lives, our personal lives, our professional lives would look like 1 year later? I'd like to start out our conversation today asking each of you to not look back a year, but to look forward a year and offer a prediction or two of what your professional world, your company, your function, your team, your technology priorities will look like in February 2022. We're going to look both backwards, so that prediction may be informed partly what you've learned based in the past year of turbulence, but I think it's interesting to look forward as well as backward. So let's see. Shannon, do you want to start us off here and offer your look into your crystal ball?
Sure, happy to kick it off. Thanks. And obviously, if we could perfectly predict the future, we wouldn't all be working for a living, right? So there's no downside here to throw out a prediction. I think what happened over the last year, though, we can kind of take a little bit of the learnings from that and say, okay, where are we going to go in the next year? We essentially saw a compression of, I think factors, technology consumption of what was maybe humanity on a certain path of consuming technology that really got compressed into, I would argue, a 1 year or even maybe a 3 to 6 month kind of cycle. There were things that we were already pursuing as an industry, and many of the folks online here were enabling some of those things. Telemedicine, right? The ability to kind of look at a screen and work with a doctor and get a prescription. There were all kinds of barriers to that. Reimbursement, the technology itself, the acceptance of that technology. Well, those barriers get removed pretty quickly when we go through the situation that we're going through with the pandemic. E-learning, when you look at what's happening there, right? Some of the things that we're doing now with remote learning and learning from home. And so I think what really happened, that I can see from my side is that all got compressed. Well, now, okay, does it get accelerated in the future? Obviously, we're a few years ahead of where we would have been, right, without a pandemic in some of those areas. So I believe we actually are probably going to revert to a normal consumption curve, in some of those areas. There's cloud services being consumed a lot more right now. There's more computing happening at the edge, and we're seeing that in some of our businesses around Internet of Things and other And certainly productivity tools around PCs are becoming real, key things in the house. People aren't going, you know what, I need to be more productive, I need another phone. Right. No, they're saying I need, a PC and a bigger screen and a work environment. So I think those trends all continue a year from now if I'm going to go for my prediction. But I also think that some of the things like services related industries, restaurants and travel and some of those other types of things rebound, and maybe even rebound in a big way. We're all sitting here kind of constrained right now, and I think that escalates, and I think that really gets unlocked in a year. So that's where I'm hopeful the predictions go.
Great. Can you just think of one thing in your own personal, professional life that might be different from what it was a year ago? I mean, one characteristic of your workspace, or not space, but working environment, or.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot more work flexibility, at our company. Previously, I'm here in Portland, Oregon. I'm empty nested. My 2 children are out of the house and in university. It's the middle of the winter and it's raining. And so I'm sitting here going, why am I in Portland, Oregon? And I think what we've got is a lot more flexibility as people with the tools and capabilities that we put in place over the last year. So my prediction would be more flexibility of people working from different locations.
Okay. Raj, look into the future for us.
Yeah, so Shannon touched on really good points. And I would say professionally, we'll get into a more hybrid mode, right? In the sense, it's a combination of flexibility in which work from home or work from anywhere. And then you'll have maybe kind of a 80-20, right? So 20% people would like to come together and learn from each other. So we will see, of course, what we are seeing in Conduent is we are reducing our real estate quite a bit.
Actually, now it's being reduced. You're reducing your footprint, huh?
Yes, we are. And so we will come to a point where we just meet maybe like once a quarter, twice a quarter when it comes to a team meeting. Obviously at some hotel or some conference or something like that. So that's more on the professional side. On the personal side, I don't think so. I'm going back to the grocery store anytime. All right. I have Whole Foods deliver food. I have Instacart deliver our groceries. I think so. I'll just stick to that. Right.
Just one thought, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. Others might as well. One of the things that interests me about those hybrid work teams is whether there will be kind of a first class and second class citizen, depending on you work face to face with your peers or you're out on the end of a video line. I think it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. Do you have any ideas on whether that'll be an issue of in-person, face-to-face, people working face-to-face versus working over a video screen?
Yeah, I think so. Seasoned, experienced people, there should not be an issue. Where I feel personally is when we hire just fresh graduates out of school, for them to absorb how a culture works in a corporation, it'll be very hard for them to just gauge that over a screen, right? So for me personally, when I started my career and I got into the corporate world, just getting into the office, knowing people, just absorbing things, right, that go on in the environment, that helps quite a bit. And that's one thing that I feel for the next generation is if it is going to be all remote, that setting that culture, right? Corporate culture is going to be a little difficult.
We might. That's something that might be worth coming back to, is seeing what sort of culture building exercises or methods companies will use to do just what you've said. Nag, tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I think a lot of the points were covered. From a professional standpoint, one of the key things for all of us is talent. Just to kind of add on, right? It gives us a lot more flexibility now to find people irrespective of where they're working from. And it's the other side too, talent flight risk. Because if we are constrained by where we want people to work from, there's also a flight risk from that standpoint. So that's something that I can see happening. And I'm seeing some trends already from there. The other thing to what you said, Paul, I look at it more like a democratization, I call it, of the workforce. No one is big, no one is small. Now we're all kind of equal. And I think that's really going to change how companies think through culture as well as purpose and values. I think that would be redefined as we go through this journey. The couple of other things from a technical standpoint, definitely the home workspace is being redefined. And my dad, actually, all 4 parents stay with me at home. And my dad keeps saying, wouldn't the real estate industry have to start thinking now in terms of how they design homes? Right. Because people are going to be with students and parents and kids, all from home now, right? And how the workspace is going to be designed at home. So people have to think through that differently. We talk about hotel and travel, but I think even how we live might change. The other thing I would say that is shifting really is we can't depend on us knowing everything now as a company. We really have to lean on others. So the whole landscape of partnerships, value-added services, I think will be redefined because everybody's going to have a piece of the puzzle as they learn, and we'll have to bring it all together. So those are some of the shifts I see from a professional standpoint. Specifically for OneMain, we are a branch-based company. And this pandemic taught us a huge lesson that branch-based operating model on its own cannot work. So we have been accelerating our operating model to say what can be done virtually, right, using technology, as well as looking at what should be done in the branch versus the call centers versus consumers doing it themselves. So it's really having us rethink customer journeys and how our branch team members can add value. So I would say some of those, yeah.
When we give some thought to, and I'd like to come back to it, is exactly how your business model may have changed, or if it'll be as quickly as a year. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Actually, on the issue of democratization, I was speaking with the CIO of Zoom the other day, and he was saying that a client of his said that it's we're looking at a screen where there's no pyramid. We're all kind of on the same level, and it's symbolic, but it actually has a powerful effect in a sense of.
And the funny thing here, just to kind of say it, is the higher you are in the organization, the less technical you are, and it actually is teaching people to learn from others.
Right.
Right. So that's actually changing how we are democratizing the organization. So
it's interesting to see if that sticks, basically. Arvind?
No, I think a big chunk of the points have already been covered by Nag, Raj, and Shannon. A couple of points that I like to add. This is what I've seen. See, one thing is we actually went about going and measuring the productivity of our associates, essentially in terms of the number of story points that are getting delivered pre-COVID and post-COVID. Actually, it has increased. It has increased by some X. I mean, obviously, I can't give you the number, but it has definitely increased. So that's a positive thing that we're observing. We are also able to drive a significant amount of training. Say, for example, there are a lot of competency issues that we had identified. Now, we are able to identify and drill it down. Okay, these are the 5 things that we need to fix it. And associates are actually able to utilize the time they were essentially utilizing for commuting. A big chunk of my company is working out of San Francisco, and they spend about 1.5 to 2 hours just commuting every day. In fact, some of them a little bit more, right? That entire commute time has now shrunk, okay? And associates are willing to spend that time in actually training and equipping themselves, right? That has also helped us tremendously in terms to really, so now the way we are tracking down this competency improvement is, hey, is my application code coverage, has it improved or not? I'm sorry, some of them are technical, so I was going into more technology-centric metrics, but the whole idea is now we are able to track down the improvement in the performance, as well as purely from a metrics that we can centrally track, report, identify as an associate, and define what we need to do, okay? From an operating model perspective, I know there's no full-fledged clarity from the corporate level saying that do we really want to move away and move into a hybrid approach, something that we are intensively pushing. And going back to what Raj actually indicated, it makes sense. I mean, for the younger crowd, they do want to come to office so that they can assimilate the culture and they can get amalgamated with a larger company. We are running alternate programs to enable something like this, even for people who are joining in fresh. And I don't know how many of you know it, but Wells is an aggressive hiring spree right now. Okay,
Mhm.
so even at leadership levels and even at developer levels, so there are a lot of people who are being added, be it full time, be it contractor. So we initially struggled in putting together a plan of how we bring them on board, make sure that they are comfortable with our culture and our ways of working, as well as being able to fit in rightly. We've been able to find some innovative ways to make that happen. So that's mostly on the professional side. Personal side, I really don't think I would be able to move out of my home till the time I have a vaccination for my kids. Okay, I'm not going to go to any office getting myself infected and then back. So that's my stand, and obviously my leadership and my peers, all of them, they appreciate and they support. It is what it is, right? I think that's hopefully that happens by this year end, right? Then we can evaluate, hey, what exactly do we need to do, and do we need to work on a hybrid approach, or let's go back to the AU.
Let me stop you right there. And Sanjeev, before we start with you, let's just go around the group here and say what sort of ratio you think of your team will be working from home. I think what Shannon said 80-20 maybe. What ratio, what's the mix between on-site and at home do you think in February 2022 on your team? Rachel, we'll start up you. I want to come back to your prediction, but just give me a number of...
I would say it's between 50 to 70% in the office, depending specifically because of the onboarding issue that was mentioned earlier. It's important, I think, to have as many people in the office as we can for that category of employee.
And pre-COVID, did you have anybody working online, or was it everybody in the office pretty much?
Pretty much everyone in the office, but of course there were some exceptions where we had people who, for whatever reason, weren't close to a local office. But that said, everybody tends to work remotely from each other, as meaning not in person, because it's such a globally dispersed group. So we all used to FaceTime on Teams or any other platform, but mostly in the office up until now.
Arthur, what about your team, of which I'm a member? How many of us will be working at home, and how many in person in February 2022?
So, it's interesting. Before the pandemic, we were probably 80% in office, 20% on home or on the road. I would almost flip that. Now, let me caveat. I think across the technology and services arena, I think it's going to move to more of a 30 to 40% in office at any one time, and the rest being at home. But I think the more provocative part of that is, for all those people at home, there's probably going to be 50% home changes in terms of moving out of cities, moving to a different location, completely redesigning their home, whatever it might be. So I don't think people's static homes pre-pandemic are going to be the same. Either in location or design.
Sanjeev, what's the ratio you think for at home and in person on your team?
Sure, the numbers people are saying is probably going to be true, right? And also depends on the role, right? Now, folks on my team, the kind of work I do could probably be done 100% from remote. We don't need physical access to servers or physical access to our branches or offices in order to do what my team does. But if I look at technology teams across the bank, we have data center people, we have network people, we have branch people who will need to go in. So, but I think the number will stabilize probably around 30 to 40%. Initially it'll be less, and then as vaccines become more prevalent, and as Arvind mentioned, that's a big concern. It's not like I get vaccinated, but what about my children?
Right.
Because, can I be a carrier? So I think it'll be still a year from now. We'll still be people saying, "I'll come to the office only if I need to."
Arvind, what the ratio on your team? Just the numbers.
I think the number's going to be roughly around 50-50 or maybe 60-40. That's what I'll say. And going back to Sanjeev's point, it's going to be based on the role. I don't think it's prudent for us, and obviously it also depends on family situations.
Yep.
There are a lot of people now who are having their own parents at home. They will be even a lot more cautious about moving out.
So Nag, just give us a number here. We're just taking a snapshot.
60-40. 60 on-site and 60 on-site.
Okay.
And 40 offshore.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say it would be rotation based at max 3 out of 5 days at work.
Okay. Raj?
Yeah, for us, I think it'll be somewhere around 60 to 70% work from home, and the remaining in the office. And in the office, mainly will be because when our customers want our people to be on site, normally we work on Medicaid accounts, right, with the state government, and they want to congregate in the same office location. Need to go to their office.
Shannon, what's the ratio with your team?
Yeah, look at I'll go with our company and then my team. So when we started pre-pandemic, we were less than 10% work from home, and in some cases dramatically less. Post-pandemic, you have to look at a couple different sides of the company. We have 110,000 employees, and call it 60 to 70,000 of them are in manufacturing. They work in wafer fabrication facilities or assembly test facilities. Right. They will still be on premise. And they will be on premise for their entire work shifts for the vast majority of them. For a large amount of the other employees, we're going to provide a lot more flexibility. It's not so much a everybody let's go work from Hawaii type of scenario, but it is a situation where we say, look, you'll probably have the flexibility to work from home 3-4 days a week, but there will be a day where we expect you in the office, and we're going to collaborate, and we're going to have team meetings, and we're going to do some other things face to face. And so we will have much more flexibility that will likely, to Arthur's point, free up location. Maybe I could, go work from a location 3 hours away from the office if I only have to commute to the office 1 day a week. Right. So it provides a lot more flexibility there, but there's still some level of proximity to an Intel facility.
I think that the found time that's going to occur from lack of commuting time, the CIO of the LA Times was on one of these recently, and he said he had an hour-and-a-half commute each way, which he'd been doing daily for years. And that sort of found time, how that's used, somebody mentioned training, and then not to forget about business travel. It's interesting. Sanjeev,
and Paul, in LA, an hour and a half is almost a 1 mile commute. So, yeah.
He could practically, he's walking. Sanjeev, do you want to look forward to February 2022? And if you have any technology predictions as well?
So I think, our situation is a bit unique here at TRUIST, right? Because we're in the middle of a merger. We're in the middle of, what is being termed by experts as the second largest banking merger, in the history of the US, merging SunTrust and BB&T into the new bank. Right. So I think we'll be a Harvard Business School or some business school case study on how to do a merger in the middle of a pandemic, right? They talk about a merger is, taking two aircraft and assembling them into a new aircraft, while flying, while they're still flying with passengers on it. We are doing that in the middle of a storm and operating it remotely from our homes. So it's going to be a very interesting case study. But I think, what we have learned ourselves is first of all, I think our ability, our flexibility in hiring anywhere has gone up, right? We are primarily a Southeast US bank, right? I mean, Virginia and South, but we are hiring people all over. We are going after talent. We've hired people on the West Coast. I've hired 2 people on my team on the West Coast just within the last couple of months. So I think that flexibility, that change in culture is already happening, where there is no longer, thinking that, we have to be in one of these few locations and the talent needs to be there. That's allowing us to get talent which we wouldn't have access to before. The second, I think I would say, is that given the success all of us have had, and I'm sure all of you will agree, this has been a successful transition to all remote because of the ability to have high-speed internet, ability to have modern technology tools. Think of if this pandemic had happened in 10 years ago, 15 year ago, how difficult it would be, right? If we were all trying to connect on 64K modems, right? Dial-up modems, God, that was probably 20 years ago. So I think the technology is there, the ability to collaborate is there. Look at what we are doing right now, but we still need the human contact. So we will have a combination of that. The second part I think people need to be very conscious of, is the equity part. Not everybody is in a position to continue working at infinitum from home. Maybe it is because of the size of their house, children, family, location, internet access. So we have to eventually give people the opportunity to come into the office for people who need to, because of whatever the reason might be. Even their job allows them to be remote, maybe their family situation or housing situation doesn't allow them to be. So we need to, have that option, and I think it'll be there. Here at TRUIST, we are looking, we are switching over in the process, like Raj mentioned, of changing how we are using our real estate, right? We are going to more of a hoteling model for our workstations, where people come in and they sign into a cubicle or an office for the day, for what they need and when they need it. So, most of the people will not need a dedicated, spot to come in every day. And those who need it, we will provide it to them. So we'll see that for the foreseeable future, I think, going on. But the dependence on collaboration tools, the dependence on, the ability to get people together and do team building exercises remotely to build that culture, I think we'll see a revolution in that space. Personally, I hope, we'll go back to, at least some form of live conferences, because there is that networking aspect of it. There's that get together with the team, and get to know people and have those hallway conferences. That's missing, right? I mean, there's, my daughter's in the room over there. That's only that many conversations I can have with her when I'm getting coffee. I mean, she's a cool effect, So, so I think we all need that the culture building, the collaboration piece. So it will be a mix. I think 50-50. I see myself going to work maybe 30%, 1/3 of the time, but not more than that. And I have the privilege to be able to work from home. But we'll see people who cannot do that showing up, needing to come to work daily.
It's a good point. And on the hallway conversations, we haven't invented the virtual water cooler yet. I mean, it means almost seriously. There's some sort of informal way in which people communicate. And Rachel.
Hi. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the predictions have been covered that I would have mentioned. I mean, the workplace, I have mixed feelings because on the one hand, there's no question IGT is looking at our real estate footprint and consolidation opportunities. We're looking at a flexible work schedule. So, 3 days in, 2 days off kind of thing. As Shannon mentioned, depending on your role, there are definitely some members of our workforce that have to be in all the time in manufacturing. And in my group, in the hardware engineering team, for example, and some testers, some people just need to be in the office and hands-on machines. So I think I'm hopeful that in a year we will have figured that out, right? So right now we're managing very, very well, completely remotely for the most part. But I'm anxious to figure out how to get as many people back into the office as possible for that face-to-face time, as well as more productive time for those resources that have to be in the building anyway. So I'm hoping we figure that out, and I'm anxious to see what trade shows look like next year. Are we going to get back to, for gaming anyway, we have this gigantic CES style trade show in Vegas every year. Called G2E. I'm anxious to see if that's going to come back to life in person, or if it's going to change, and if companies are going to realize that they survived somehow by not having this grand show that we put on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But mostly I'm looking forward to getting back into the office and seeing the team again, because for my group in particular, and I'm sure the guys can attest to this, I feel like the only reason we get anything done, as complicated it is what we're doing, is by the camaraderie and the trust that the teams have with each other, on top of course, their skills. And so when that, those relationships, if they start to fracture, I worry that, we're going to lose the magic, right? So I'm looking forward to getting people kind of back into the normal swing of things to the extent possible. Obviously, a new work paradigm, but I'm hoping we can still see each other once in a while.
There's real yearning in your voice there to see your team,
Yeah, it's what makes it all happen, right?
Right.
I can second that.
Go ahead, Sanjeev.
I joined TRUIST, in the middle of last year, at summer of last year, and I have yet to meet any employee.
Yeah, isn't that?
I knew a few people from before, so I've met them, but there are people on my team who I work with who work on my team. I have never met them. Right?
Wow.
I mean, so it's tough. I do really want to go meet and network, get to know the people, and there's only that much casual conversation one can have. When we are working longer hours, we are working certain things take longer. I know Raj. I think Arvind mentioned that productivity has gone up, but you're all working longer hours also. The whole blending of when do you get off work?
That commute time got put right into work.
Exactly. I texted somebody at 7 yesterday, not realizing it was 7 p.m. Right, and then I'm going, why isn't he responding? I'm like, wait a minute, it's 7 p.m. I don't want him to respond. So I think it's that human building of a team is very difficult to do remotely. Right? How many happy hours can you have after work?
Right. Virtual happy hours. Arthur?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm very optimistic. We're still at the outset of the decade. I do think a year from now, the pandemic will still be a cloud of smoke around us, but hopefully less thick than it is today. The vaccine rollout, unfortunately, is slow. It's actually faster in so many other countries. It's incredible. And there are all kinds of issues behind that. But I was looking at my calendar 1 year ago today. I started my week in Mumbai. I had meetings in Dubai. I was in New York and Chicago for meetings, actually today, and then flew home to Florida for the weekend. And that was it feels like 8 lifetimes ago.
Right.
We all start to lose that relationship capital that you get having meals with your team and with clients and, really being in the streets and in the trenches. And I think we all kind of yearn for that. It's interesting. I think every business represented here is going to be the beneficiary of stimulus checks and a rebounding economy. And we're going to see incredible demand in e-commerce areas. Investments in digitization and digital acceleration is going to continue. 5G, right? That's on the horizon, and towers are going up and phones are being bought and all the infrastructure in between is being put together. That's going to have significant impact. I think cybersecurity is going to be a significant threat still for everyone, and it's going to keep compounding exponentially over this next year. To me, beyond the business model stuff, it's humans. And so a year from now, I think people will be okay. The question is, 5 and 10 years from now, what are the long-term impacts? I think it was mentioned earlier, the young generation starting their career, not getting all the social interaction and the networking skills. So what are the long-term impacts going to be, for senior workers, mid-career workers, early workers? And I think that's going to be a generational type of thing. I do think cities are going to get redistributed. So many of my own employees have left big cities searching to get, even a small yard or a small area that their kids can go out and play instead of being in a concrete city. And I think that trend is going to continue, and it's going to have significant impact in so many ways with businesses. When you think beyond that, the whole labor market, so some people are very optimistic. There are going to be lots of jobs, to be had, and then there are going to be lots of laborers looking for those jobs. And the question is, how many people will leave the market in total? I know of people that are older in their careers that are saying, you know what, I've been through a lot this last year. I don't need this anymore. I'm just going to, I'm going to retire 10 years, 5 years early. And people are going to do that. How many millennials will be stepping up, or Gen Z stepping up into those new roles? And what will their adaptation look like? So I think it's going to be an interesting time, and we're all going to have to stay pretty agile and keep our heads on a swivel.
Those are it's amazing to think of how that will change our personal lives. I'm curious. I want to go back to something Shannon said initially, but use that as a jumping off point. You talked about the compression of adoption of technology. Are there any thoughts on what comes out of this past year about the way you will use technology? Were there innovations that emerged from the constraints of the pandemic? Will there be? Has it reshuffled your priorities in any way? Do you think that compressed time frame for adopting things will be like an accordion and stretch back to where it was before? Will it stay compressed? I'm curious on your use of employment or adoption of digital technology within your own organizations. Anybody jump in who feels has any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll start with, from our perspective, we like to look at the way technology is adopted, because we're obviously trying to design some of the next gen computing and network and storage and other engines. I would argue many of the things that accelerated the technology adoption, I talked about 5 years compressed into a quarter or two. Many of the things that were preventing it or holding it back weren't the technology themselves. They were largely regulatory or systemic, right? No doctor who had infrastructure in an office was saying, I got a great idea, let's massively adopt telemedicine, right? But then the minute that nobody would come to the office, they became the most vocal proponents of let's adopt telemedicine. So you get sort of, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? You get some of those examples where I think you get massive acceleration in a very short period of time, not necessarily for the technology itself. But then Arthur brought up, 5G, and I know some others are thinking about how they adopt 5G in their infrastructure. And we all think of 5G initially as consumers of, okay, my phone has a faster data connection. That is not the majority of what 5G adoption is going to be. It's going to be either some new service consumed by a company themselves. Think about things like autonomously driven vehicles, or inside of a manufacturing environment where you make you could think about it as your own 5G base station in your factory, and you use that to connect devices in a way that you previously couldn't with Wi-Fi because the range was limited or the amount of data that you transfer is limited. So that compression, I think, has multiple different accelerants that go through it. But then I think there are going to be naturally some things like AI or, VR, where you're going to see a more traditional technology adoption curve until there's that accelerator, that necessity accelerator that comes along. And so that's kind of the way that I'm looking at some of the technology adoption.
That's interesting to think whether that necessity accelerator can be created, without the external forces, and maybe we don't want it to be, but it is interesting to see what is the catalyst for the sort of compression we've had in this last year, whether we'll see something again soon. Any other thoughts, folks, on what sort of technology environment you see 1 year from today?
So I think the pandemic forced a lot of us to think outside the box, because what was in the box didn't work. I think the lessons learned would be to, and hopefully it will stay, right, that we will continue thinking outside the box. The box might become, the definition of the box might change, but I think hopefully we will continue thinking outside the box, because it allowed organizations to do things which they never thought possible. They never thought they could move so quickly. And they never thought, okay, we can challenge the status quo, right? It's the cultural inertia of large organizations, right? And I think people moved and did things which were never thought of before. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine who works for another company, and they were again an office-based company, and they shipped out laptops within weeks to every employee. They had to. There was no other way around it, right? And we did the same here at TRUIST also. So I think those are the kind of outside the box thinking which became the norm this last year, and one can only hope that it will stay the norm.
Yeah, to Sanjeev's point,
people to stay at the cutting edge so much more easily.
Yeah, to Sanjeev's point about that, and just to put some data to it, previous to the pandemic or prior to the pandemic, the worldwide PC market was around 260 million units, give or take. And then you add other devices to that, like tablets and other stuff, and the market we're expecting to exit the pandemic, let's say you exit in a year or a year and a half or whatever it is that you talked about, the fog, Arthur, that's still there. We're expecting to exit the pandemic at least 100 million more units a year.
Wow.
Maybe even 150 million more units a year on top of that number.
Wow.
So you could be exceeding 400 million units of PCs a year. And you think about working from home and learning from home and the experience, that Sanjeev, was talking about. And it's, I need to be productive, and what do I need to be able to do that?
I was just thinking, for years, the concept of design thinking, everybody's been talking about it. It's actually been forced upon all of us, in the way we live in our homes right now. And, certainly everybody wants to have beautiful homes, but functionality, right? Where are you going to put the home gym equipment? Where are you going to put your home office, your kid's home office, your spouse's home office? And how are you all going to, not trip over each other no matter what size home you are? And I think that's going to be huge and drive more technology in the home and more functionality. It's going to be real fascinating. Sorry, Rachel.
No, that's okay. I was just going to follow on to what Shannon was mentioning, and in particular with the gaming industry, what we've seen. I think it was mentioned before that sometimes we have these technologies already, but now all of a sudden there's just this instigator for change that happens because of the circumstances. So for gaming, as an example, of course, all the casinos shut down. And so there was a couple of things that came into play. One, oh my gosh, even though we previously didn't allow online gaming, maybe now's a good time to allow players to play games online instead, or place online sports bets when they couldn't before. And when they come back into the casino or they opened up at 50% capacity, et cetera, suddenly casino operators were saying, where's that cashless gaming product that you've been trying to sell me forever, where we can use Bluetooth and tap into the machine and add credits and add funds, where before it was one of those things that was regulatory prohibitive in many places. Suddenly you've got the operators needing it, you've got the players needing it, and suddenly the regulators are starting to fast track some of those approvals and changes, which for us at IGT has been fantastic, because there's nothing worse than building something really modern and great for the consumers, but that have some barriers in place that just obviously prohibit us from getting there. So for us, we've seen such a great momentum in that regard that we're really excited about.
It's interesting. Whether you talk about the formal regulators, but going back to the thinking outside the box or finding we can do things we didn't know we could, whether our own internal regulators have been kind of loosened about what is even possible. I guess that's it, as possibilities expanded as a result of our experience. Was there any thing that came out of that you recall, a moment during the past year that some idea came through, or insight or innovation that will continue to change the way you work, or what your technology is a year from now? I'm wondering if the pressure of the pandemic squeezed out some new processes or innovations.
I'll
take in.
Go ahead, Raj.
Sorry, Arvind.
Yeah,
so I'll talk about in healthcare, right? So Shannon touched on telemedicine and Arthur talked about 5G. Building on top of that, what we have seen acceleration in two other areas, one being remote patient monitoring, and the other being the expedition of clinical trials, right?
Exactly.
And now clinical trials are taking place even remotely. Before, it used to be a match of a patient with certain things, and it used to happen in person. It's completely happening remotely right now. And touching back on remote patient monitoring, the level of innovation that is happening is now we are getting real-time data, and that data needs to be analyzed real-time to find the insights as to what is going on with this patient, given the history of this patient. And it gives the inputs to the relevant, say, care manager or the doctor to take certain actions really real time. So, right? So having that access to that data, doing streaming using remote patient monitoring has become very key.
and the immediacy of that data. If people talked about how edge computing might make that the realization of that data even faster than before. You might be able to respond to a stroke patient before that person even was able to call 911 if you didn't go all the way to the cloud, for example, and back. That's an interesting aspect of it. Other things I'm thinking, even in your work life, that you've done differently. I mean, we've talked a lot about work environment at home, but were there just going to the idea of adoption? Do you think that you will be working at this pace in February 2022?
So I think even though the work environment will change and the work from home versus office balance might change, I think the expectations of speed and productivity and how we collaborate, and quite frankly what our customers are expecting from us, has changed. I'll give you a personal example. I was interacting with a company and they said, you got to come in the office to sign the papers. I'm like, are you guys nuts? What do you mean? Sign papers, email them to me, use whatever the e-signature thing, right? What planet are you from? Which generation are you in? And the expectation has changed. Pre-pandemic, I would have just driven over like 2 miles away, whatever mile away, and gone signed the papers, right? Or whatever. I don't have a fax machine. Otherwise, they said fax it over. I'm like, God. So I think the expectations of our customers have changed. The expectation of our teammates have changed. The expectation of our leadership has changed. And that will stay. Hopefully, I'm hoping it will stay. The crazy hours hopefully won't stay. The expectations will stay. And we will have new technologies a year from today which will allow us to collaborate even better. Right? Better telepresence, better whiteboarding. Because certain things are tough, right? We were having a series of meetings at work and we like, dang it, if we could be in a room with a whiteboard, it wouldn't have taken us 3 1-hour calls. We would have knocked it off in 90 minutes. Because you can collaborate so differently that way. And we use online whiteboarding and all, but it's not the same. We need to get there. We need some more innovations to come in that space. So I think it'll continue and it'll accelerate, and expectations, the barrier is, the threshold has been crossed. We won't go back to the old school, come into the branch and sign this paperwork expectations.
So we've got, I just want you to know this is all being recorded. We're going to send you this recording in 365 days and see how accurate you've been in your
All right, so here you go, Paul. So here's a prediction. 3 years from now, we're all going to wear thin glasses. They're going to give us VR capabilities, and we're all going to be in the same room and even be able to virtually high five and shake hands and do a chest bump and everything else, and be on a whiteboard and maybe pull that slot machine lever, but it's all going to be virtual.
Yeah. And
I think we're going to see the world accelerate. Intel's going to make it happen. All of our partners here are going to help with the financing and the home loans to get it done. We're going to see a lot of that.
Well, that is certainly a bold prediction.
and Conduent's going to make sure that surgeons can really get in there properly with those glasses on.
Yeah, right. Those predictions.
What I'm wondering is,
right now, I just want to know where I can buy my son a PS5, right? So
it's a big mystery of the world right now.
So I want to take this chance to thank all of you for the time. I think there's been a lot of interesting points made. One of the things that struck with me is the challenge of building a team when there's not as much face-to-face interaction, particularly obviously with new people or new members, but whether even with an existing team, whether takes more than virtual happy hours to build a sense of esprit de corps and mission. Another thought that I thought was interesting is that whether our brains have been changed in some way in our expectations of what can be done or how fast a technology can be adopted, that we've removed some of our own internal regulators in that regard. but as I said, we'll take a look. We'll send this to you in 3 years. We'll send it to Arthur in 3 years, and we'll send it to all of us in 12 months and see how we've done. Thank you once again for spending time with us today and sharing your insights. It's a real pleasure and an honor to do that, and hope we get a chance to do it again sometime.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Chatting with you all.
Bye-bye.
You as well.